The Patriots lost to Baltimore. Tom Brady got outshined by Joe Flacco. Boston Celtics trading Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo towards ACL. The point guard will miss the remainder of the season. Boston Bruins, as they did lose in the Stanley Cup Finals in Game 6. Best game of the season. This Denver Broncos New England Patriots game was bigger than the Peyton Manning Tom Brady Bowl.
Down 3 goals in the third period, the first NHL team in history to ever come back from that deficit.
The road to redemption will continue all the way through the World Series after the Sox took out the Detroit Tigers in a 6-game series, won the World Series at Fenway Park for the first time in 95 years. Two bombs went off by the finish line, killing 3 and injuring at least 170 people.
Asked so many people, and they just said it looked like a battle scene out there, and you feel bad for all the people there. I mean, this was just such a cowardly act.
This is our city. And nobody gonna dictate our freedom. Stay strong.
Sports does serve as some sort of therapy. The expectations with this team just keep growing and growing and growing. Boston Celtics are officially rebuilding, surprisingly hiring Brad Stevens for the next 6 seasons.
We've never seen him coach in the NBA, so we're just gonna have to wait and see.
And they said, you know, we're not gonna lose this game, especially not this way.
So I think Brady's learning to do more with less.
I was actually pretty shocked at the end result.
Because they wanted to win this for the city.
Welcome to this best of 2013 episode of Out of Bounds. I'm John Luck. Over the next hour, myself, Brian Berard, and Corey Kleiman will be talking about all of the big sports stories from 2013. From the Patriots getting defeated in the AFC Championship game to the Boston Bruins giving up 2 goals in the final 17 seconds of the Stanley Cup Finals, to yes, of course, the Boston Red Sox and the World Series celebration. We'll also give our thoughts as we go ahead and talk about the events that happened on Marathon Monday and the Boston Marathon bombings. All this and more coming up, but we do start off with the New England Patriots and the Boston Celtics. The Patriots, as I mentioned, did lose in the AFC title game to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Boston Celtics, well, they were supposed to tank, however, they are vying for first place in the Atlantic Division. The Patriots fell short of their 6th Super Bowl in 13 seasons, losing to the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship game. This was the first time the Patriots lost in 2012 by more than 1 possession. The offseason was turbulent, we'll call it. Wes Welker signed with the Denver Broncos in a 2-year deal, so the Patriots had to answer back, and they did, signing Danny Amendola from the St. Louis Rams for $31 million over the next 5 seasons. Rob Gronkowski had a back operation that would keep the Pats tight end out for the first 6 weeks of the season. Gronk would return against the Jets. In over 7 games, he'd get 4 touchdowns as part of a 39-reception season. However, the injury bug would return, and number 87 would get sandwiched by a pair of Cleveland Brown defenders in a hit that would tear his ACL, making his return at the start of the 2014 season in question. In June, the Patriots' now former tight end Aaron Hernandez was arrested in connection to the murder of Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro football player, and the Pats would cut ties with number 81 just mere minutes after he was cuffed and taken out of his Attleboro home. We can't forget the Patriots signed Tim Tebow. Yep, Tim Tebow, and he would play in a grand total of 4 preseason games, only passing for 1 touchdown. Tebow was cut 2 days after the Pats' preseason finale against the Giants. Patriots found the inner Red Sox with last-minute victories against the Saints when Tom Brady connected with Kenbrell Tompkins with just 2 seconds left. Sunday Night Football featured Manning Brady Part 14, and the Broncos were the only team that showed up in the first half, scoring 24 points in the first half, while the Patriots mustered a total of 0 points. But that wouldn't stop QB12 and the Pats in the second half, as Julian Edelman caught 2 touchdown passes, while Rob Gronkowski had a 6-yard touchdown reception, and the game would be tied at 31 going to overtime. And after a special teams blunder by the Broncos, Stephen Gostkowski kicked a 31-yarder that would be good, and the Patriots would steal a game against Denver 34-31. The game against the Cleveland Browns was supposed to be a cakewalk for the Patriots, and it was not anywhere close to that, as the Browns actually led the Patriots 26-14 at the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter. But Julian Edelman caught a 2-yard pass to make it a 26-21 game, and so the Pats had to make an onside kick, and they successfully did so for the first time since the mid-90s. And Danny Amendola caught the game-winning touchdown that would be a 27-26 win for the hometown team. As they make their way to the postseason as the AFC East champions, the Patriots 2013 certainly showed the highest peaks and the lowest valleys. The Celtics 2013 was a big year of change, and we start in January when the Celtics point guard Rajon Rondo tore his ACL against the Atlanta Hawks, and number 9 would be out for the rest of the season. He could return by February of 2014. The C's would make the playoffs and would take on the New York Knicks in a rematch of the first round just a season ago. Despite a valiant effort by the C's, including a 21-point run, the team would be beaten 6 games, and the Knicks would move on. The year of change continued when Doc Rivers was traded to Lob City, joining the LA Clippers in exchange for a first-round draft pick, and Danny Ainge wasn't done wheeling and dealing, and on draft night, the Celtics GM pulled the trigger on the deal that some thought needed to be made, sending Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and Paul Pierce to Brooklyn in exchange for Keith Bogans, Chris Joseph, Gerald Walsh, Marshawn Brooks, and Chris Humphries. Yes, the former Mr. Kardashians wearing the Celtics green colors. But for a team that needed to get younger, they did that, as they also acquired first-round picks in 2014, 16, and 18. A day before America lit off fireworks to celebrate the 4th of July, the Celtics had some of their own fireworks, and a bombshell was dropped with the announcement the team signed Brad Stevens to a long-term deal, and the road to rebuilding was officially started. The Celtics season would start after a 2-6 preseason. After 4 straight losses, the team would get their first win against the Utah Jazz, but the big win in the early season was against the Miami Heat when Jeff Green caught the inbound pass and drained a three-pointer with 0.6 of a second left, and the Celtics would steal a victory in South Beach. In a year of rebuilding for the Celtics, the team actually led the Atlantic for 3 weeks ahead of the Nets, Knicks, 76ers, and the Toronto Raptors. Boston welcomed home Doc Rivers during a visit by the Clippers, and although LA would win, the hometown crowd was the big story, cheering for Rivers at every opportunity, causing the former C's head coach to tear up at the podium. 2013 for the Celtics can be summed up in one phrase: expect the unexpected. Here with Corey Kleiman, we took a look at the Patriots and Celtics topics that we talked about throughout this season. We're going to start off with the New England Patriots. So they lost in the AFC title game against the Baltimore Ravens, and they, well, struggled, looked like a little bit in the 2013 season, but really came down to Tom Brady knowing his offense, especially throughout the first 13, 14 games of this season.
Right. You see that the way that the team completely changed going into the beginning of the season, losing Wes Welker, Aaron Hernandez, and obviously now Gronkowski's gone, but even he was gone in the beginning of the year. You see kind of what kind of quarterback Tom Brady is, and that's why I don't know if he would be a great candidate for MVP, but at least just the best quarterback that can do with so little. I mean, you see quarterbacks in the NFL, and if they don't have a great surrounding cast, like you look at Andrew Luck his first couple of years, I mean, he did some things, but if he doesn't have those pieces, he's not as great as he is. And for a great example, you look at Eli Manning. He lost a lot of his crew, and he kept Victor Cruz, but a lot of his receivers left, and he couldn't do it. He fell apart. So this kind of just shows how great Tom Brady really still is, that even though he loses most of his offense, he still goes out there every week and still puts on gives them a chance in hell.
I look at this almost like a combination of Tom Brady doing very well at the quarterback position, but also the Patriot way coming back to bite them, because they let Wes Welker go over $2 million. But you look at the past and the wide receivers that they've lost, Randy Moss,
Daniel Graham.
There's been a lot of receivers and offensive weapons that Tom Brady and the Patriots have lost, but I think right now what we're seeing is the Patriots playing with what they have. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show with Brian, that I don't think the Patriots are going to be in that much trouble as they go throughout the playoffs without Rob Gronkowski, because you have the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season that you didn't have Gronkowski in the first place. Now it's going to come back on to Dobson and Tompkins. They've had enough time for that learning curve to really kick in.
Okay, that was the beginning of the year. Now we're going into the playoffs where you're going up against teams every week that are playing for, great teams that are playing for it all. And you're expecting Dobson and Amendola and all these guys that are new and that are young to come and play under the lights in probably Denver, maybe Cincinnati.
But do you expect this team to go past the AFC Championship game?
No, I don't. Now that Gronkowski's gone, it scares the heck out of me to see. I just think he's that guy that they need to have in the playoffs, and it's bitten them in the butt. Like, history does repeat itself. Like, the past couple of years, he wasn't able to go, and look what happened. Like, they didn't have that target that they need. Wes Welker was great. All these other guys, Hernandez, in the past couple of years were great, but Gronkowski was the key guy that Tom Brady looked to. And it's going to be that thing again. I mean, of course, we haven't seen him play without him yet. I mean, obviously, probably by the time the show comes out, you will, but it scares the hell out of me without having him because I just don't think that, I mean, yeah, we played the first couple of weeks of the year without him, but this is huge, I think. I mean, it's just huge.
Just as big as the Gronkowski injury was, you look at the big injuries in the first part of the season. You had Vince Wilfork go down in Week 3, I believe, in Atlanta. You had Gerard Mayo go down, Sebastian Vollmer. This was a season that, you don't want to hear teams blame on injuries, but this is a season, I think, that the Patriots look back at the injuries that they suffered, and that's part of the reason why they are going to end up where they are, fighting for that 2 seed, maybe getting the 3 seed, and having to play wild card weekend.
I don't think they'll have to do that. I think they'll end up sneaking in because look at the remainder of their games. I think they're very winnable. I think they can go out and win most of the games. I mean, the Ravens are going to be tough, but I think they can take on Miami. And Buffalo, I think, will definitely give us some challenges. So I think they'll beat Miami no problem, but the Ravens and Buffalo are obviously going to give us some worry. But this is going to be that kind of game. These games that they have to go out there and they have to play to kill. That meaning you have to go out there and try to score 50, 55 points because you need to use you have to go out there and try different things that you can use in the playoffs. This is like another preseason, I think, against teams that maybe they know they're not going to be a big thing in the playoffs this year, but they're good enough competition that if you do well against them, it boosts your confidence going into the playoffs. So I'm not giving Baltimore or Miami or Buffalo that bet like a cupcake kind of mentality, but you need to go out there and win this at the best. There has to be the best effort that you've given all year, so that way when you go into the playoffs against the Cincinnati, against Indianapolis or Denver, that you're going to be able to go up against them.
Let's look at a couple of individual players, starting off with Stephen Ridley. He had his issues this season. Of course, starting off in Week 1, he fumbled the ball against Buffalo. He fumbled against Denver on national television. That got him knocked out for the game against the Texans, a healthy scratch. So Stephen Ridley, once you go into the playoffs, he's going to be a very important player. So that we have that extra running back system, so you can have Vereen go out to be one of your receivers.
But like I've said before, he needs to suck it up and just get over it. As a football player, you have to be tough. Like, life's tough, everything. Like I've said this before. And you know what? You screw up, don't be a wimp about it. Don't puss out. Get yourself together and go out there and play. I hate it when they get babied like that. It's just, it drives me nuts. If I was Belichick, take him out, sit him down, and tell him, get your act together, get your head out of your butt, and let's go. It's not a serious thing. You know what I mean? You did it on national television. Well, go out there and prove it to them. That's why you look at like this younger generation. That's just the way they are. If something doesn't go their way, automatically, they bottle up, cry in the corner, and then that's it. They give up. And that's what ticks me off about him, and how even the way you're saying about it, like, oh, well, you know what, he was embarrassed, but, oh, they might not put... Get over it, Ridley, all right? Jesus, I'm sick of hearing it. Get over it. Get over it, and just get out there and hold on to the ball. Keep it tight to you, and get some yards. Go down. Don't try to be a hero every play, because you're not going to be. Okay? You're not Barry Sanders. You're not going to every play break a 50-yard run. Don't have false illusions of yourself. stick up for yourself and go out there and just play. You earn the job. That's all I have to say.
And quickly, Aqib Talib, he got schooled by Steve Smith on Monday Night Football when they went down to Carolina, but also he has troubles against Josh Gordon again in the Cleveland Browns game. So Aqib Talib is another focal point for this defense.
Oh, I mean, I think he's a great athlete, and he's a great defensive back because, you know what, he's not huge, but he can stay with the big receivers. I mean, Smith schooled him, but, that was a fluke. But you see him week to week. He goes out there, and he stays with the receivers, and he can jump, and he's just very athletic. He has great hips. He can shift really quick, but he's a thug. He's a straight up thug, and you know what? We knew that coming in. I hate it. Everyone hates that mentality of a player, but that's what he is. He comes from the streets, and that's what he is. You have to understand, he's going to get into those scuffs with other thugs. That's how it is. But you know what? You have to either take the good with the bad, and know that's how he's going to be going up against certain receivers that he has beef with, and that's just how it's going to be. As we saw against Steve Smith and a couple other guys, this pushing and the extracurricular crap, you can't take that out of him. That's just who he is. So, that's something that Bill Belichick has to understand. And you know what? As much discipline as you want to get into it, he's an old dog. You're not going to teach him new tricks. That's just who he is. So, like you said, the mental breakdowns that they're going to have, you have to accept that. So, I think that's, as bad as it is, that's just who he is. So, you're not going to change it. I mean, how do you think about that?
I feel the same way. Aqib Talib is always going to be one of those players that you have to watch out for his mentality.
Well,
but
it's
also,
the same as a Corey Dillon and Randy Moss.
And his physicality, or his physical health as well, because he's had hip issues the past 2 seasons. So that's something they're going to have to watch out for down the stretch. And it makes you wonder during the offseason that they're going to try and go out and get some secondary help to help out.
Well, I've been preaching that for how many weeks now?
So now we go to the Boston Celtics. We go from a championship contender to a
pretender.
Yes. The Boston Celtics did lose in the first round of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals to the New York Knicks in a 6-game series. But this team, cleaning house completely, getting rid of Doc Rivers, signing Brad Stevens to a 6-year deal, getting rid of Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and in exchange essentially getting Gerald Wallace, Chris Humphreys, and a lot of draft picks in exchange. So this was a team that we thought was going to be tanking, but at least for the first 3 months of the regular season here, this is a team that's showing that they are going to go out there, they are going to have heart, and this is a team that doesn't want to go out there playing the tanking game.
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to the coach. You have a young coach, and he wants to go out there and he wants to prove it. He doesn't want to tank. I personally thought they were going to just tank it all together because they want the draft picks. But if you look at it, Brooklyn and who's the other team they have draft picks from?
Clippers.
The Clippers. I mean, the Clippers are doing okay, but the Brooklyn Nets, they've really sucked. I mean, going into the season, we didn't think they would go out there and win it, but you think they would go out there and at least do what the Celtics are doing right now. But they haven't, and I think you look at that, we're going to have some pretty decent picks no matter how we do this year. So you look at it, I think they're doing okay. I mean, you have a lot of young talent, and they're very athletic. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to go off and win a championship or do anything like that. But, I mean, I think it's definitely fun to watch them and something to look forward to. Now, I don't think any of the guys they got from the Brooklyn Nets are in their future at all. They're just here to maybe build their resume a little bit with Chris Humphreys and Gerald Wallace. I think they're just here to build their resumes. But you look at it, if they do get Rondo back this year, I know there's some questions towards that with his ACL and whether they want him out there. You could look at it at actually winning a round in the playoffs. I mean, is that going to help them with draft picks? Who knows? But you do want, I do make this point, though. You do want a very good draft pick because you look at the next upcoming drafts, you have Wiggins, and then who else? You have very little people that come, like in the draft, you have the first round and the second round, but after you get like midway through the first round, there's a couple very good overseas players, and then there's some mid-major who you're not really sure. It's a hit or miss. And you do want to get that top pick, that lottery pick in the draft, because you know you're guaranteed a good player. But if you get a little bit further down, don't you agree with me on this? You get a little bit further down the draft, and it's just some foreign, not really mid-major kind of guys that they could be a hit or they could be a real big miss.
All right. So as far as the Wallace-Humphreys thing goes, that's a mess.
You know that's just
That's
a
not
what,
going to be anything.
It's a building of a resume.
Gerald Wallace could be is
Right.
a good 6th, 7th man off the bench, giving someone some time off. But Chris Humphreys is there just as a trade bait type of situation. So, but you look at the players that they have right now. Vitor Favarani, he's been pretty good, especially under the glass, in the paint, those situations.
He's not big enough, though, I don't think.
No, but he has gotten a lot of shots to go down. So
Right.
he's a player that you can keep
Like a power
in your
forward.
offensive system.
Small forward,
Right.
power forward, yeah.
Avery Bradley, another player, and then once you get Rajon Rondo back, this is a team that has the potential to get to the 4th seed, the 3rd seed, a chance to have home court advantage in the first round. If that's the case, and they take on a team like Miami, we're starting to see Miami, have their flaws. I'm not saying that they're going to go out and beat the Heat in a 7-game series. That's not happening, but they're going to be able to be there to give the Heat a series. The Heat and the Celtics would have a series, I think, a 6-7 game series.
Right, and you look at Brad Stevens coming in here this first year, and we all know what he did at Butler, and it was a cool situation, but you look, I see a lot of similarities between Spoelstra and Stevens, just the way that they deal with things. They're always positive. They go out there, and they're not going to throw their players under the bus, but they're not going to take crap from anybody either. And they're just great game managers, I think. Because you look at Spoelstra, he's not a great coach. He's kind of a no-name kind of guy, but he knows how to manage the big egos. He knows how to manage games. And you look at Stevens, he just seems like he's not going to overshadow his players, but he's not going to shy away from them either. I think he was a great pick for this position.
Brad Stevens is one of those coaches that we're seeing right now because he's in a no-lose situation here.
Right, he's not going anywhere no matter what.
You're seeing his heart rate maybe take a little hiccup once in a while, but that's about it. I mean, we saw when Jeff Green sank that shot at the buzzer against Miami,
Right.
Brad Stevens just, waved over at Eric Spoelstra and got off the court. He's not going to go out try and be bigger than the team because he's a nice, modest man. He's going to go out there. He'll say, yeah, we did a good job. Yeah, we did a bad job. He's not going to go out there
That's
and
what I'm
start
saying.
throwing plays.
He's not going to overshadow anybody.
All right, so we go from the Celtics now to the Boston Bruins and the Boston Red Sox, two teams that were affected by the marathon bombings and really made their seasons, especially the end of the seasons, a tribute to Boston Strong. The Red Sox 2012 was the most embarrassing season in a number of years, leaving the fan base with questions of what kind of team is this, with Bobby V and the clubhouse issues and a 93-loss season. 2013 brought a year of rebuilding as the team hired John Farrell and brought guys on board that didn't necessarily steal the headlines, but played for the real love of the game. The team paid tribute to the tragedy at the Boston Marathon, and David Ortiz took the mic and got the crowd fired up.
This is our city.
Sox fans should have known the season that this was going to be, as on the day Red Sox fans remembered those affected by the marathon, Daniel Nava launched a game-winning home run over the bullpen wall to give the Sox the win over Kansas City. 2013 would be the year of the comeback. The Sox would relinquish first place for just a small number of days, but would eventually run away with the division, with part of their success coming off of 11 walk-offs, including a 7-run comeback against the Seattle Mariners. After Andrew Bailey and Joel Hanrahan went down with season-ending injuries, Koji Uehara stepped up, becoming the team's closer, converting on 21 of 24 save opportunities, and on September 20th, the Red Sox clinched their first AL East championship since 2007 and got set to take on the Tampa Bay Rays in the ALDS. In the division series, the Rays took an early 2-0 lead in Game 1, but the Sox would answer back with 5 runs in the 4th inning. David Ortiz popped one into right field, but Will Myers misjudged the ball, and that was the turning point of the series as the Sox would win Game 1 12-4 and win the series 3-1. In the ALCS, the Sox took on the 3-headed pitching monster of the Detroit Tigers, Anibal Sanchez, Max Scherzer, and Justin Verlander. After Sanchez almost no-hit the Red Sox in Game 1, the Sox were trailing in Game 2 until David Ortiz hit a grand slam off of Joaquin Benoit, and the Sox would take Game 2 and take the series, lining up the Red Sox for a rematch with a very familiar foe. The Red Sox and Cardinals met up in the World Series for the second time in 9 seasons, and Game 1 would go to the Sox in very convincing fashion, 8-1. The Cards would take the second game at Fenway, and in St. Louis, Game 3 would go to the home team after there was an interference call on Will Middlebrooks in the bottom of the 9th inning. The Red Sox would take that loss in Game 4 in a must-win, and the Sox would win 4-2. After a Game 5 victory, the Boston Red Sox had a chance to win a World Series at Fenway Park for the first time in 95 years, and the Sox would win 6-1 as Boston would celebrate its 8th championship this millennium. The NHL season would have to wait to start their 2013 season, as the league was in a nasty lockout that came within days of having another hockey season canceled. The Players Association and the league would agree on a 10-year collective bargaining agreement, meaning the teams can go back to the ice and the Bruins could start their quest for the postseason. The team had a playoff spot clinched in early April, leaving the team fighting for a playoff spot with the city supporting them throughout. The Bruins were supposed to play on April 15th, but hockey and sports took a back seat following the events at the Marathon. On April 17th, there was a feeling in the Garden and across New England that the Bruins on that night could provide a distraction for just a couple hours and show that they could beat Boston strong and be one fan base and be one voice. The Bees would enter the playoffs taking on division rival Toronto, and the Bees would be back on the ropes entering Game 7, losing 2 straight games and being down in the third period of Game 7. After a furious comeback, the game would go to overtime and the Bees would win thanks to Patrice Bergeron, and the team wouldn't look back, beating the Rangers in 5 games and sweeping the Pittsburgh Penguins back to Pittsburgh, setting up an original 6th Stanley Cup final. The Bees and Blackhawks Cup final would be an intense one from the start, and Game 1 would show that in a triple overtime thriller that went into its second day, with the players growing tired and every shot and save meaning more and more. Chicago would take Game 1 around 1:30 in the morning. This Cup final would have 3 OT games, and these two teams played till the last whistle in Game 6, as the Bruins had a 2-1 lead with 1 minute and 15 seconds left. But in a span of 17 seconds, Brian Bickle and Dave Bolland would score goals that would give Chicago the Stanley Cup final. The Bruins traded Tyler Seguin to the Dallas Stars in exchange for Louis Eriksson on July 4th after the young star had issues off the ice. As the team gets ready for another run into April, they have had their attitude issues from Sean Thornton, who snapped after a stretch when multiple teammates were taken out. The Bees' fourth liner pulled down Brooks Orpik of the Pittsburgh Penguins and banged his head against the ice, resulting in Thornton being handed down a 15-game suspension. The Bees 2013 had a team coming so close to hockey's biggest prize, but that loss has the team wanting more and bringing a bigger appetite for the postseason. Now joined by Brian Berard. Brian, 2013 was a great year for the Boston Red Sox, obviously going from worst to first, but really just after that Marathon bombings happened, really just taking the town and taking them for that ride that brought them to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, we said this multiple times on the show. I think really what happened in April in Boston really propelled the Red Sox, because they were the first team that, put that Boston Strong jersey in the dugout. They were the last team to come play at home. Well, besides the Patriots, but they were the last team to come back home and play. And I think really the city, they got around not only the Bruins, but I think really the Red Sox a little bit more, because I think the Red Sox kind of mean a little bit more to Boston than what the Bruins did and what the Celtics did. I mean, and it's great for what the other cities did for us, but like I said, I think really what happened in April propelled this team, especially you saw it in the playoffs too.
Now let's go a little bit before April, back, last December, last January. The signings of the players like Johnny Gomes, like Shane Victorino, Koji Uehara, players that you look at them before the season and you say, well, why are we projected to, finish third, fourth? And all of a sudden, why are we in first place? We signed players like a Johnny Gomes, Shane Victorino. These are supposed to be just players that make it loose in the clubhouse. And all of a sudden, these guys are taking on very crucial roles. I mean, Koji Uehara, I think one of the big reasons you won the World Series is because he was your closer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times people will look at the off-season signings and say, this guy isn't, this talent isn't going to, necessarily propel us. But I think it was the big key was getting Josh Beckett and Carl Crawford out of that locker room, and I think you brought in character guys, and everyone meshed very well with this Red Sox team. And they all made each other better, and they all wanted to win for not just themselves, but they wanted to win for Boston. They wanted to win for their teammates.
And as I talked about earlier, the fact that you actually had people in the clubhouse that actually cared about baseball, Dustin Pedroia, Mike Napoli, Jared Saltalamacchia, they went up to Toronto during a day off as they were getting ready to play the Blue Jays the very next day. They took in a baseball game. These are guys that actually wanted to hang around each other for, the 200, 250 days out of the year that they actually had to be with each other.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have saw that, in the Bobby Valentine managed Red Sox. The second they can get away from baseball, they did. I mean, heck, even during the game, they'd get away from baseball when they had the chance to. But, it just really shows you that these guys liked each other. They wanted to be in the clubhouse, and it's unfortunate that, we've lost some of those guys this offseason. But for the most part, I mean, I'm not going to try and, preview next year, but, it really just shows you how much they cared about each other and how much they really loved this game and how much they wanted to play it and how much they really wanted to play for each other.
John Farrell was hired as the manager last year, and I think that this is a great signing because you brought someone that was familiar with how to handle the Boston fan base and the Boston media. I mean, you need a savvy guy like that. Bobby Valentine, he treated the media like it was a circus each and every day. I mean, the day he got fired, he rode a bike through Government Center and, announced that he got fired.
Yeah, I mean, also, not only that, he knew about the media, but John Farrell knew this team. I mean, he had experience just from a few seasons prior before he became the manager in Toronto, but he knew what these guys were capable of. I mean, and I think it really helped not only the whole team, but more importantly, just the entire pitching staff. I mean, really, the biggest improvement you saw was John Lester, especially in the postseason. But I think really having that confidence, knowing that you have that security blanket in John Farrell around you, I think the pitchers really stepped up their game.
So let's look ahead to next season a little bit here. Obviously you lose Jacoby Ellsbury, 7 years, $153 million to the Yankees, but you sign Mike Napoli to a 2-year, $32 million deal. I think that's a great signing. We're starting to see now the Red Sox getting a little bit more savvy with their salary cap. They're going to probably go over by a few million this year on the luxury tax, but this is a team that's now watching their finances and trying to make sure that they don't make any stupid decisions because they got a huge mulligan a couple years ago by getting rid of Carl Crawford and Adrian Gonzalez.
I don't know if they're going to go over the luxury tax because prior to this offseason signings, they came in with $104 million in guaranteed contracts. So, I mean, are they going to do it? No, I think they're going to start trying to do that Moneyball approach. They're going to start lowering the payroll, and they're going to try and bring in quality guys. And we've seen the Oakland Athletics do it year in and year out. And they have a consistent playoff team out there on the West Coast, and I think that's what you're going to start seeing now. Everyone's going to start trying to get away from the Yankee method of buying a championship. Even the New York Yankees are starting to get away. Well, not in recent years, but they were starting to get away with it. They're starting to go with their minor leaguers. They kept, Derek Jeter. They kept Robinson Cano. Brett Gardner was in their minor league system. They're starting to go with those guys. But then again, now that they're starting to lose interest in New York, I think that's why the Red Sox made these signings. They were losing interest to the Patriots. I think that's the same thing happened in New York. They were starting to lose interest to the Giants, and now they've got to make these signings now where you got to bring in the fan base back to Yankee Stadium.
I don't have an issue with the fact they signed Dustin Pedroia to a 7-year deal. If you're going to do that, you have to show you have confidence in your player and the effect that he has on your team. I mean, probably in a couple of years he'll be named the team captain because he already is the captain. But going out there, signing 3, 4, 5 players to 6-year deals, that's either going to really work well or be a complete, absolute train wreck, and you need Magic Johnson to come by and save you. But we do turn our attention now to the Boston Bruins, who did lose in the Stanley Cup Finals in Game 6 thanks to giving up a pair of goals in 17 seconds. Oof. But nevertheless, Brian, this was a Bruins team we talked about right after the Stanley Cup Finals. We didn't think that this team would come anywhere close to the Stanley Cup Finals, maybe the semifinals.
No, I mean, especially after what we saw in Game 7 in the first round against Toronto, being down by 4 goals. I mean, we said, what a great season. You know what? They gave it their all, and then all of a sudden they just caught fire. I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs, that's a pretty darn good young hockey team that they have there, and they really gave the Bruins a run for their money. And I'm still surprised that they came back in Game 7. And the fact that they bowled over the Pittsburgh Penguins. No one saw that one coming. A sweep of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the team that Jerome McGinley decided to go for instead of the Bruins, and now all of a sudden, hey, look who's now in a Boston Bruins uniform. But the fact that they got to the Stanley Cup Finals is unbelievable. And I think, too, like the events that happened in Boston kind of propelled them as well because don't forget that first game back. I mean, the way that the crowd handled it, belting, or pretty much at the top of their lungs, screaming the national anthem. And then you still had to get another game canceled because of the chase. And then you had to come back again, and they're still belting at the top of their lungs the national anthem. I think it's great, and I think it really propelled them. But that's unfortunately when the Bruins are kind of going through a slump. But I think that kind of lifted them a little bit, and they want to do it for the city. But man, the Chicago Blackhawks, are they a good team or what? I mean, they started the season undefeated for, a stretch of 25 or so games. It was just unbelievable.
The Boston Bruins pretty much shotgun last season. I mean, it was a 66-game schedule, something like that, maybe less, 48. But I think if this team played a full 82-game schedule, I don't think they'd get to this point. I mean,
no.
You saw what Patrice Bergeron had on a list of injuries. I mean, my goodness. A punctured lung, cracked ribs, and a bunch of other injuries. So Patrice Bergeron certainly showed the meaning of being a Boston Bruins hockey player.
I think Gregory Campbell showed a little bit more, breaking his leg. And then instead of just laying like a lame duck out there, he got up and he tried to block yet another shot with a broken leg. And then he finally got the courage finally got the chance, I should say, to skate off the ice. But that's an amazing thing. And, this whole season with the Red Sox, it's if Gregory Campbell comes back before Clay Buchholz, what storm is that going to create here for the Red Sox? And but just unbelievable that the gut in this team. I mean, Zdeno Chara played pretty much more than half of every single postseason game. I mean, you can't give that guy that many minutes. I mean, he's eventually going to get tired, and I think that's what it ended up happening. But these guys really, they toughed it out, and they showed you that really these hockey players are the toughest players in sports.
I want to go back to the Stanley Cup Finals for a second here. The fact that they went to triple overtime in Game 1 of the Chicago series in a, real cramped schedule for the Stanley Cup Finals, did that have any effect on the Bruins losing in Game 6?
I think a little bit maybe they got fatigued, but I think kind of a lapse in judgment there. They thought, they're up Game 6. They're going to force a Game 7 back in Chicago, and I think for those 17 seconds, they kind of just forgot about it. They took their foot off the pedal, and Chicago did what they had to do, and I think it was just more of a mental lapse than physical fatigue.
All right, quickly, we're going to fast forward now to the current season we're in. Obviously, the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, that was a complete bloodbath. I mean, Brad Marchand, we'll call him that, went down with an injury. You had, obviously, Sean Thornton being suspended for a long time. But really, the injuries on this team, are we going to be seeing the effects of this as we go on throughout the season, maybe into January, March?
Absolutely, and I think you're going to see fatigue because I think Tuukka Rask is playing way more minutes than he has to be. I mean, you got to put Johnson. Johnson was in there the other night, but against Edmonton. But you got to give Tuukka Rask more days off because he's starting to let up some cheap goals because he's just getting that fatigue. And it's unfortunate, but because you have to. I mean, you're losing so many of these key players, whether in off-season signings or if they're getting injured. But this Bruins team is really being depleted, especially on the defensive side.
All right, so we go from recapping the Boston sports teams to recapping some of the sports stories that changed the Boston landscape. Obviously, we know about what happened in April. We'll talk about that in a second, but just leading off quickly here with Aaron Hernandez. Don't forget that he did go out with a group of his friends and allegedly shot Odin Lloyd in an abandoned dump area, if you will. And then he did get arrested just a few days later after pretty much having an O.J. Simpson-esque chase through Foxborough, 495, that area. Now, charges as of this taping never got put on him. I mean, he's waiting inside of a jail cell inside Dartmouth prison. So the effects that Aaron Hernandez had on the Patriots throughout the first few weeks of training camp in the regular season, they might have shown their effects because all players had to do was answer questions on Aaron Hernandez.
Well, that's kind of the Patriot way to just ignore everything. And I love how everyone said he's no longer on the team. I don't want to answer questions about him anymore. And I mean, it's such a Patriot thing to say, but it's kind of the best thing you got to say because if you start if there's one player that gets involved and starts answering questions with his own personal opinion, then the media's just going to flock to him, and they're just going to be relentless until they find out an answer. And I think it was better for the Patriots just to say, you know what, he's not on the team. We're not going to answer questions about this anymore. Ask me about the season.
And then, of course, we want to talk about what happened back in April. Obviously, it was Marathon Monday just after the Red Sox game around 2:30, 3 o'clock. Two bombs went off about 30 seconds apart from each other. And, there were a lot of injuries, 3 deaths, as you know. But just the fact of how Boston did rally around after what happened on Marathon Monday, the first Red Sox game, the first Bruins game, really just being Boston strong for that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really just goes to show you, not even just with these marathon bombings, but even going back to 9/11, it just shows you how much importance sports has kind of in this world. It kind of just, it makes you forget about what happened, and it brings us all together. And just, like I said, it was one of the most, I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it, just the national anthem that, I mean, they belted it at Fenway Park. They belted the one inside the Garden, though. That was really awesome.
Renee Rancourt said, because I heard him in an interview, that he was not going to come anywhere close to finishing that anthem. I mean, just the energy in the Garden that night. Whew. And then Fenway Park trying
unbelievable.
And then Fenway Park trying to repeat the same feat, having some issue in an open stadium. But nevertheless, David Ortiz proclaiming this our city. But I think really the thing that symbolized it was in the 8th inning against the Royals, the first game back, Daniel Nava launching a shot into the bullpen. And, that really symbolized what the Red Sox season was in a short phrase.
Yeah, and I think also, like, the icing on the cake, I think, too, is we had a picture about this about the parade, the championship parade, and the fact that they put the World Series trophy at the finish line, put the Boston Strong jersey in there. I think that was an awesome move by the Boston Red Sox, and it just kind of showed you that that the Red Sox, they not only did they do it from themselves and the teammates, but they really did this for the city of Boston. They wanted to repay them. They wanted to show them that you guys really were a motivating factor in all of this.
I mean, you think about the events that went on that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Of course, the 2 suspects in that shootout in Watertown that obviously took the life of an MIT officer. The fact that Boston really just does not forget what happened in April, and I mean, not to try and compare the events because there's no comparing, but I think that we're going to be seeing Boston Strong, so like what happened in New York City on 9/11, that we won't forget what happened on Marathon Monday.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like I said, I'm not trying to compare the two here, but I think what happened at the marathon was kind of more geared. They said it was towards the United States, but I think it was more geared towards just Boston. With 9/11, that was more of an attack on the United States. But I'm not trying to compare the two here. Don't try to misquote me. But I think the whole city of Boston's really going to rally around this, and they're not going to forget this. April 15th is just going to live in everyone's mind for the rest of their lives.
And obviously, the next Marathon Monday that we have is going to be something special, as everyone remembers the events that happened just 1 year ago. We'll be back right here on the best of 2013 edition of Out of Bounds. Welcome back to the best of 2013 on Out of Bounds. I'm John Luck with Corey Cloudman, who joins me once again. 2013 is winding down, especially in New England. We have seen great teams, great players, and great games, really awesome games in New England. So we're going to start off the best of awards with the team of the year. And it looks like this: the Boston Red Sox, the Boston Bruins, the New England Patriots, and from the world of sports, the Baltimore Ravens, who beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, and the Miami Heat, who won the 2013 NBA Finals for the second consecutive year. So who is the team of the year?
Well, I have to give the Boston Bruins a lot of props. They got to the Stanley Cup Finals. They came out there and they just, with the Boston bombings, and they came out there and they just had a lot of heart. I just think they were missing a few pieces, so they come in number 3 on my list. I'm going to give the Miami Heat my number 2 spot. Oh, I know. I mean, I hate what the Heat stand for as a team-wise, because I don't like LeBron James. I can handle Dwayne Wade. I like Spoelstra, and Chris Bosh, I can take him or leave him. But I just think they're just a great team overall. And I think last year they learned. I mean, they did win back-to-back, and I think the first championship, they were more all about individual. But last year, we saw them come together and play like a team. And it was freaking awesome. Like, just the athleticism that they have. I mean, it's great to watch them. I mean, I'm not a big fan of basketball because I think it's more about me than team. But I think they just showed that they could. And they went up against a great team with the Thunder. And I just think that they have a great future. But number one team, I'm going to take, not just because I'm a homer, but I think the Boston Red Sox were the number one team. They overcame the Boston bombings, just like the Boston Bruins did. But they just came together with not that much. After a year of just being in worst, the worst team, and that's why I think the Heat came in second, because they're coming back to back, which isn't easy to do. But when you have a team like the Boston Red Sox that were in the worst position, last place, and had a bunch of guys that really weren't big name players. You have your, Pedroias and your pitching staff with Lester and Lackey, but a lot of these guys we had never heard of before, and they came out here with a new coach, with John Farrell, and came out and just shocked us. They had zero expectations, so them sneaking up really wasn't a big thing for them. So that's why I'm giving them the team of the year. And I think Farrell should have won the manager of the year. We've already talked about that. I think Terry Francona, I don't think he didn't deserve it, but it was a great homey feeling to see the Boston Red Sox win.
Great homey feeling.
Right.
Nice when women say.
Oh yeah, made you warm all over.
For me, it is the Boston Red Sox. I mean, you look at the expectation that they had coming into the season. They weren't going to repeat what they did last year, going 69 and 93, something like that. But what I was expecting personally was a team that was going to be in contention for the wild card. They would finish with 85, 86 wins, but this team was constructed almost like the 2003-2004 team. You have your all-stars in there, John Lester, Clay Buchholz. And,
You're idiots.
Yeah. You have your David Ortiz, Dustin Pedroia, but no one expected to get the performance that they got out of Koji Uehara, Shane Victorino. I mean, Victorino was playing with
Johnny
one arm,
Gomes.
one hand. Johnny Gomes. This was a team that they actually cared about baseball. If you remember in Toronto, I think it was July or August, the Red Sox had an off day waiting for the Blue Jays to play. And it was a day game for the Blue Jays, and all of a sudden the backstop, you see Mike Napoli, Dustin Pedroia, Jared Saltalamacchia out there. These are guys that actually cared about baseball. The joke that we saw back in 2011, 2012, those were guys who cared about money, and then baseball was just second nature to them.
Right. And you know how we're going to be talking about player of the year? I would like to give out an attitude change of the year, too, to Dustin Pedroia. Because I think he was one of those guys that was just, his attitude was shifted when you did have those clowns in the locker room, in the clubhouse, that were all about beer, chicken, and women, or whatever it was. And I think he did fall victim to that a little bit, because you saw the way that he reacted. Well, whatever, we lost. That's just how it is. And then to see him kind of move into like a captain figure this year, where he was all about it. And I think he needed that attitude change, because I think he gave up. I think he zero craps given, because I think he did. I think he saw the team that he won a World Series with in 2007 change into this. And he changed with them. But I think the front office saw that he had that attitude change, and that's why they kept him around.
All right, I'm just going to touch on this quickly before we go player of the year.
Right.
But with Pedroia, it's almost like he was fighting a losing battle. It was 24-1 essentially, because back in 2012, Ortiz did tear his Achilles tendon, so he wasn't there for the second half of the year. It was Dustin Pedroia, and then you had everyone else. And after
all the egos.
After the Josh Beckett, Adrian Gonzalez, Carl Crawford deal, it was pretty much everyone pointing ahead. I mean, give credit to Dustin Pedroia. He played in 161 games. So now we go to player of the year. Peyton Manning from the Denver Broncos, Tom Brady of the Patriots, LeBron James of the Miami Heat, Patrice Bergeron for the Boston Bruins, and David Ortiz for the Boston Red Sox.
I mean, Patrice Bergeron, I have to give him props, because he definitely came out there with a punctured lung, and God knows what else injuries he had during the Stanley Cup Finals. And I'm going to have to give it to David Ortiz. He's a guy that last couple of years, he's been injured, kind of slow, not moving that well. He had his ankle problem, like you said, Achilles heel. And then he gets this huge contract. And I know me, you, and Brian had a big discussion on, why are you giving him this kind of money for this amount of years? He's old, he's fat, he can't do anything anymore. And that was at the beginning of spring training. And I think we all kind of had that thought in the back of our mind, why are we doing this kind of thing? Like, why aren't we moving on and trying to get someone else to play the DH? But then he comes out this year, and not only during the regular season did he come up with some huge hits, he had flashes of 03 and 04 in him this year in this playoffs. With all those walk-off hits, all that motivation that he gave the team, and he came up, and he was a big reason that we won this World Series. I mean, I know you had Johnny Gomes and all these other guys in the pitching staff, and Uehara, and the other Japanese guy, Tozawa, they were coming out. But Ortiz, he came up big night after night, and just the motivation on the bench, and coming out and making some decent plays on the field when he had to play in the World Series. So this is a guy that I think he definitely wins Player of the Year. Other guys on this list, great athletes, great years. Tom Brady coming out here this year with really nothing, and we've already talked about that. But David Ortiz is my player of the year.
All right, I'm going to go with David Ortiz as well.
Can't we argue about something?
Fine, I'll take LeBron James.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'll take David Ortiz.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he had the Achilles injury last year,
Right.
we didn't know what type of David Ortiz that we'd get. Then he comes back on the day that everyone was, remembering the whole Boston Strong situation. That was his first game back. A lot of people don't remember that, but
And he said his
right.
motivational speech.
Yes.
We're not going to repeat.
No, but this is someone that the Pink Hat fans really rallied around between 2009 and 2012 when he had his downturn. But now this is David Ortiz. He's been a leader in the locker room, and we saw it during Game 4, I believe, of the World Series when he had that dugout meeting. On to the game of the year, and we've been treated to some classics here in New England. Patriots and the Broncos. The Patriots down at halftime 24-0 on Sunday Night Football. They rally back to win in overtime 34-31. Red Sox Tigers ALCS Game 2 down 5-1 in the bottom of the 8th. David Ortiz with 2 outs came up to the plate and hit a grand slam over the wall just out of reach of Torrey Hunter. The Sox would win the game 6-5. They'd win the series, and just in case you don't remember, they won the World Series. And finally here, the Maple Leafs and the Bruins Game 7 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. They were down 4-1 with 10 minutes left to go in the game. The Bruins looked down and out. That is until Nathan Horton made it 4-2. The Bees got a pair of goals by Milan Lucic and Patrice Bergeron in a 1-minute span in the last 3 minutes of the game. That would send the game to overtime, where Mr. Bergeron would come back once again. He'd get the game winner to give the Bruins the series winner 5-4 in overtime. That was a final, and the Bruins just demolished the Rangers. They demolished the Penguins after. That win led them to the Stanley Cup final.
Right, and I think that was probably the series of the year, I think, hands down. But for first place, it's kind of a tie. I mean, I love the Red Sox versus Tigers, that game, especially because, man, just the dramatics of staying up late, and it brought me back when in 07 and 04, and even 03, when they were playing for World Series, and you'd have that big hit by David Ortiz. And it was great. But the Patriots versus Broncos, come on, that was a great game. And just to watch it, and I remember coming home and sitting down and seeing that they were down, 24-0 at halftime, something like that, I forget. And just to see that, and I'm like, I guess I'll watch a little bit, and then I watched Family Guy a little bit, and then, flipping back and forth. But then they started to come back, and I'm like, all right. And then once they were getting up there, I committed myself to it, and I was like, all right, let's see if they can do this. And then to just see the collapse of Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos defense, man, that was awesome to see, because up to that point, they really hadn't had that moment of just collapsation, of just seeing Denver, because all year they were just killing people, 48, this, that. And then to see the Patriots come back, I think that was the game of the year, hands down.
In the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast, my friend.
I'm going to go with the Red Sox Tigers ALCS Game 2.
That was a tie. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to give us something to argue about here.
All right.
But, I mean, the fact that the Tigers had such a dominant pitching staff, Anibal Sanchez in Game 1, he had a no-hitter going into the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs. And it looked like that was going to be the way this entire series was going to go. But all of a sudden, David Ortiz with 2 outs, he did awful against Joaquin Benoit prior to that bat, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, first pitch lights it up and sends it into the Tigers bullpen. That really set off memories of 2004, but that also set off the Boston Red Sox, because then they realized that the Detroit Tigers are a team that they can beat. They lost one other game in Detroit, but they rallied around David Ortiz. They actually rallied around John Lackey and his pitching performances. So that was a true team effort in that game. The Patriots and the Broncos.
That was a huge team effort.
Right.
You had multiple receivers make big catches.
But to quote Brian, it was a battle of suck versus suck. In the first half, it was the Patriots having their woes on the defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball. But in the second half, it was time for the Broncos to go ahead and choke under pressure there, and it came down to Bill Belichick with that big decision to make the Patriots kick with the wind. Yeah, they took the possession over the possession.
Which could have come back to bite him in the.
That was a roll of the dice that really worked out. But all three of these games, if you watched a marathon of these games, that would be great, compelling television. When we come back, we talked about the best of 2013, but time for the really great part of the show, the bloopers of Out of Bounds, coming up right after this.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jack Black. You want to play? I didn't pick up air guitar until I was 23, and now I'm a rock god. Seriously, if you want to play music, don't let anything stand in your way. Learn how to get started at wannaplaymusic.com.
Welcome back. It's time to go ahead and continue a New Year's tradition and show you the best of the worst of Out of Bounds. Yes, what you don't always see is sometimes the best part of the show, what you don't see before, during, and after the show. So let's take a look as we look at some of the bloopers of 2013.
10 points for a league opponent. You're gonna rush it. Oh, I'm sorry. Stone, that's what I'm gonna call you. Veronica. Rolling Stone. You obviously have no idea what movie I'm referring to. I think, John, do you know what movie I'm referring to? Thank you.
Oh, that's the
Anchorman.
Anchorman, yeah. Just to let you know, when you read these, the graphics going to come up. So they're not going to see you cheat. Fucking. All right.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Out of Bounds. We talked about Giselle and football and talked about bad competition and bad jokes. That's going to do it. For Corey Kleiman, Brian Berard, Dan Johnson, I'm John Luck. Thanks for watching. Get ready for a paper toss. Oh, you missed.
I hit
So
it.
close.
You missed?
No.
You gotta take a...
Wait. Oh, wait, we were still on.
Mo.
All right, this is not the 20.
All right. Listen, here we're gonna make a movie now. Look at the camera now. Here we go. Here we go, John.
Please
Pick your
stop.
two picks.
I'm gonna take.
Sorry, John. Keep going.
I'm gonna take the Houston defense.
Wow. Wow.
Yep. All right. So,
Well, I haven't picked my kicker yet.
yep. Time to go unique. I'm gonna take Steven Gostkowski.
All right. I guess. I'm going to go with Matt Bryant out of Atlanta. I think he's going to be kicking a lot of extra points, a lot of field goals for that offense. It's high power this year.
I'm just taking a shot in the dark here. I'm going to take Steven Gostkowski. He took my other pole off.
You just drafted him.
Oh, I thought he's. Oh, no. I'll take the other pole off. I'll take Sebastian Jaskowski out of Oakland. How's that sound?
Jakowski.
Ah, whatever. Polish.
Sebastian Janikowski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
That's my only.
Yeah, I think
that's all we
I think
got.
that's our team.
Oh,
All right.
I
Don't pick those picks.
watch out.
Damn it, that's off camera.
No.
Yes.
Put the TV on here so we can see it. Jeff, put the TV on the camera so. How do you do that from the inside? How do you put the TV on there so you can see it?
Well, one chance to wobble is
So we can see what's behind us.
the BC.
What the hell is that? Do you have any tickets this year?
And that'll do it for this episode of Out of Bounds, the best of 2013. I can certainly speak for Brian and Corey when we say thank you very much for watching for the past 2.5 years. And we certainly look forward to bringing you the best of our small town views on the big town sports in 2014. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, BTVOB on Facebook, also on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @BTVOB. That'll do it for this hour, though. I'm John Luck. Thank you much for watching, and have a happy, safe New Year. We'll see you in 2014.